Tiptoe around with face of a stranger. Quiet observer, never get too close. I see the world, but it's through this window. Another side to see, I'm ready to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. He's from the city, she's from the south. Two different chapters told miles out. The back row living in his White House. So many stories that I need to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. So many stories right in front of me. Some people climb to heights I've never seen. Too many falling down off their feet. These stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. Why you're the way you are. Why you're the way you are. Tiptoe around with face of a stranger. Quiet observer, never get too close. I see the world, but it's through this window. Another side to see, I'm ready to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. He's from the city, she's from the south. Two different chapters told miles out. The back row living in his White House. to heights I've never seen. Too many falling down off their feet. These stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. Why you're the way you are. Why you're the way you are. Tiptoe around with.
Hello and welcome. Good evening or good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, or if you're watching this later or in the year 2300. We are honored that you have joined us. It is Wednesday, Wham! And I am your host, Scott Wakefield, and I'm surrounded by artists tonight. I'm feeling a little outnumbered. Hopefully my writer friends will be joining me. Yeah, look at those so artists. You can't trust them. I can't even turn my back on them, and they're miles away from me, and I don't even trust them. We are going to talk tonight about the writing process. I'll give you that, the specifics of that in just one moment. But if you haven't figured out, we're Silverline, and we're here just to have fun and chat comics and pop culture and movies and storytelling and whatever else comes up. Before we get into that, I can't forget to let everybody know that we are brought to you, sponsored by, with love and care and compassion, by the Daytona Beach Comic Convention. And that is, months ago, I was thinking it's so far away, but now it is just around the corner, September 18th and 19th in Daytona Beach, Florida, which I hear is lovely in the month of September. I've never been there in September. I'll find out because I'm going to be there. And I don't know about the rest of the gang, but we are going to have a large Silverline presence. So if you can get there, and yes, we're going to have a lot of creators there. We'll be ready to sign comic books, and if you were one of the folks that got the signature books, the autograph books, bring that, and we will sign our pictures, and that thing will be worth billions and billions of dollars very soon. I got a feeling it's going to be worth a lot of money. And if you are going to be there, I would recommend getting there early and being one of the first 250 folks to be there, because Silverline is giving away 250 posters to the first 250 people, and then we're going to have Daytona Beach Comic Convention special edition comics as well. And there's going to be creator signature cards randomly placed in the goodie bags of every attendee, and I hear some of our faces. You're going to have our faces on some of those cards. So it's going to be an incredible time. Daytona Beach Comic Convention, September 18th and 19th. Thank you for your support, and hopefully we'll see you there. Hey, all right, we got a good crew tonight. None of you guys. Okay, Dean, you've used your real name. Thank you. You're not trying to hide your identity. Dean, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
What are you working on right now? I don't mean this very moment, but what's in the hopper for you?
Hey, man, I'm so glad you asked. For those of you who are watching, you see a little poster behind me called Silver Blade. That is my upcoming project for Silverline. And it's going to come up in the conversation a little bit later tonight as we talk about creating a page and storytelling and so on. But yeah, it's going to appear in a project that will be announced soon. A little part of an anthology, perhaps. And then the series itself will launch next year. So you're getting to see a little color preview of it, which we previously have not seen.
Oh, so this is a first.
Yeah, it's a debut. The color cover, banner, the branding image for my Silverblade comic book action.
Oh my, the big debut for Silverblade. Yes.
You know it.
All right. And wait a minute, Dean,
yeah.
I thought you just drew things. You
Oh,
You
no.
write stories as well.
Oh, I write stories as
Oh
well.
my
sir.
goodness,
Yes,
Dean.
indeed. Yes, indeed. So, yeah, this is going to also be the debut, the premiere, if you will, of my writing for Silverline. And even though I'd worked on story concepts and so on and plotting with Cat and Mouse way back when with Roland, I'm writing this as in full script. So, yeah, blame me if it doesn't work, or congratulate me if it does. Hopefully it will. Hopefully you'll like it.
From what I've heard, from what I've gleaned, and what you've teased, such a tease, it sounds like an awesome story so far. So yes,
Thanks so much.
so much teasing. I'm on my screen. I'm gonna go anti-clockwise, as they say in England, and someone calling himself Artistic Viking. There, is that what your parents named you? Because if they knew the future.
I'm just some ugly guy that just stumbled into the wrong room.
You've got the T-shirt for it, and we're all a bunch of handsome men here, each more handsome than the last. I think this might be too much handsome for the internet. Yeah, give us
get a haircut.
Who got a haircut?
Dean, apparently.
I even got a
Dean's,
just for tonight. As a matter of fact,
Dean's looking good, always looking sharp.
So trying to keep it clean, high and tight. You know what I'm saying?
Family show, apparently. I think.
I'm doing
That's
everybody.
a haircut
again.
you can set your watch to.
There you go. There you go. Well, but you were talking to Prince Voltan there, so
Yes.
go right ahead.
Yes. Say hello. Use whatever name you'd like for tonight, and tell us what you're working on right now, either for Silverline or for funsies.
Hey everybody, this is Blood. No, this is John Martin. I'm currently inking Wolf Hunter for Silverline, and then I'm going to be wrapping up Firebrush after I finish up issue 1 of Wolf Hunter, and then I'm doing a bunch of other stuff for funsies, and I can't talk about everything I'm doing.
That's fine. That's fine.
Which sucks because I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it, but I can't. That sucks.
And Wolf Hunter, written by our good friend Tim TK, the Baconator.
Oh yeah.
Who hosts or produces the Tuesday show. Aaron, did you know there was a Tuesday show?
Heard of it.
Yeah, Tuesdays. It's some weird Pacific time over on that other coast. So I honestly don't know.
As time is in Guam.
Guam time and all their weird those Pacific islands, they just choose and do with it whatever they want. Yeah, we've got a Sunday show, we've got a Wednesday show, we've got a Tuesday show, we've got podcasts. We're all over, and our stories. John, you're working on Wolf Hunter, and Firebrush is coming up. It's really cool. I want to remind everybody. I always forget these sorts of things. SilverlineComics.com. If you want to get your hands on any of our titles. Across the top, you can click, and it'll take you over to Indie Planet. If you want to go straight to indieplanet.com/Silverline, you can check out all of our titles, almost all of our titles. I know there is one conspicuously missing that I just can't think of the name of it. Written by, it's just a marvel of storytelling. Anyways, I'll think of it sometime during the show. But if you want to grab our comics, we'd love that. Buy 1, buy 10, buy 100, and give them to your friends. Spread the love. Around the horn here, Demas 30. What's the nature of that name? I missed that. I'm sorry.
I was a big fan of Secret of Nim. One of the main characters is called Nicodemus. So I just took out the last part of the name. It's the name I use for my gaming, and it's the one name that's different enough that most time when I put it in computers, they accept it instead of like this name's been taken, right?
It's been taken.
So it's weird enough no one knows this, right? So yeah.
Okay. All right.
So yeah. So what am I doing? I'm penciling. I have finishing up the first issue of Obsolete. I literally have 1 page left to go, and I had other work coming, so I'm gonna have to break that page, and it usually takes me 2 days, but through the week. I was gonna try to get it done. It's like, work came in. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I could do that. And then I'm working on my Goblins, finish issue 11, which I have pages waiting to be colored in my scanner. And then what else am I doing after that? Then I think I'm finishing up Godlings issue 12, and then Obsolete's number 2. So I have stuff coming in the pipeline.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
And I also write my own stuff. I write Godlings at least. I don't write Obsoletes. So I write one.
He did the pencils on Firebrush too. He just he just likes to do that stuff.
Firebrush and number 3 it's a 3-part series, correct? Is that correct, or is it 4?
I think it's 3. I think Firebrush is 3. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we have one issue left to release, and then we're done with that one. Yeah, you can find Godlings on Webtoons, and you can find it in my stores, Humphrey's Illustration at BigCartel.com. I think there's a link to that in the down below. But yeah, you can find all my comics there. And it's only 12 issues, so once it's done, it's done. Then I'm moving on to other stories. So
that's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
He also finds time to be a part-time DJ. You know,
I do.
He spins a little bit too.
Spins a little bit.
Spin the tunes. Where and what genre?
I just threw that out there. Just totally joking.
I was excited. I wanted to know. It's been in the top 40. Dean, you've had some radio experience, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've done a few shows. Yeah, here and there. A little bit of Memphis radio back in the day. So, yeah, man. You know. We all have a past, my friend. We all have.
I got to.
Too.
Oh.
Yeah. John was a DJ. John had some very interesting jobs. We could do a whole show
on our jobs.
Some of John's.
John's job.
We probably don't want to go there if it's a family show. I'm just throwing that out.
Okay.
Well, not appropriate for YouTube.
Okay. All right. Well.
There you go. So anyway,
just keep that. Just keep people wondering.
Yeah. Makes us more mysterious, Scott. Adds to the mystery.
Yes.
It means you want to come over to the table in Daytona Beach Comic Con and come talk to me and see
hear all the stories. That's right.
That's brilliant.
Yep.
Brilliant. See what he did there? See, I brought it full circle.
That was good.
It's
that
like
was
I was say,
September 18th
Guam,
and 19th.
Have somebody watching from Guam.
No way.
Yeah, my daughter's in Guam.
Is she? Why? Navy. All right. Fantastic.
Oh.
Yeah, that's I was stationed in Hawaii, and in the grand scheme of like the globe, that's pretty close, but in the scheme of like the Pacific, that's still really far away.
Well, she's stationed on a ship, and her ship's main port is Hawaii, but they're in Guam.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
they're in Guam now. Okay. That I've heard wonderful things about that, and Hawaii was fantastic, and I would love to go back. Someday.
Dean, she says, "Hey,
hey, tell her."
Hey. Our topic for tonight, and Dean proposed this one, and we all just were gaga over it. And actually, no one had a better topic, so we okay.
Yeah, just kind of went with it or whatever.
Dean picked it up, and we are talking about. We're going to talk about this back to the storytelling world and how writers and artists, and I know writers are artists, but we have to differentiate some way. The arters, those who put the images on the paper, we're going to call them artists for the sake of this discussion tonight. How we compose the page, and I think we'll branch out into the whole comic, but we're going to talk about how we plot, how we plan the beginning, the middle, the end. Pacing of the comic book, and I'd love to talk about how the writer and the artist work together as well. So for folks that are watching or listening, I don't want to assume anyone knows what we're talking about. So if we throw words out there, and even me, sometimes the artists will say something I don't know what that is. But the story starts with the basic concept in the kernel of a story in a writer's brain. And then that writer, however the writer, and we'll go back to all this about the details, but the writer will then write it out, plot it out, however, from beginning to end in some fashion. And then if the writer cannot draw, which is what I am, I cannot draw. If only I could draw, my life would be so much more so much easier. But I will, as a writer, the writer figures out the way they want to plot with the artist, and sometimes the artist wants very loose story, or they might want every detail, and we'll talk about that as well, perhaps. And so there's a back and forth with the writer and the artist, and they work to plot out this comic book. We're going to stick to comic books of 22, 24 pages or more. In the digital printing world, we're not as limited to the 22-page standard of a comic book. And then it'll go through an editing phase, usually with the two of them. And then if it depends on who's on the crew or the who is publishing it, maybe there is an editor, and they plot the whole thing out, and hopefully it comes out and they polish it to be a nice story from beginning to end. And if it's a one-off, or if it needs to end on a cliffhanger, or if it needs to lead into the next comic, that's all in the plotting. So that's the basic process, and I was very basic with that.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, yeah, and that's it. And then it's a success, and then the writers and the artists are just counting their money, just laughing all the way to the bank. John, you must be doing something wrong, because I mean, the amount of money just rolling in.
Rolling, right. But Scott, since you're the only exclusive writer in the group,
yes,
right?
I can't art.
Why don't you tell us your stages of creation, does it start with just scribbled notes, or do you start on the computer in a formal fashion? How does it start, and then how does it go from the idea to the page, to the script page?
I try to be more organized, and I have this notion that I'll use a spreadsheet and I will plot it all out and be very organized, and I don't. It just doesn't work for me. So I start with paper, and I start usually with my big idea. And I like the plotting method. Now, it doesn't quite translate to comic books perfectly, but it's where I get my method. And it's called the Snowflake method. And I don't know if it was invented by, but it's been made popular by, perhaps invented by someone named Randy Ingermanson. And I really like it. If you search the Snowflake method, he starts off with the little details, grows big, and then goes back down again. And I really like, that's the way I like to do it. I like to start with my elevator pitch, which is my one line. They call it an elevator pitch because if you were in an elevator with some executive, Steven Spielberg or whatever, and he says, "Oh, what's your story about?" You only have a few seconds. So it's an indication if you've got a good story, if you can distill it down to a sentence or two, if you can keep it under 20 words. If your story if it's way more complex, you might still have a good story, but you haven't narrowed the idea down. And that's the base that you can work from. So then you can expand that out into a paragraph, a bigger plot. And then you can keep expanding that plot till you're getting to the point where you're getting the main sections of the plot, the rising and falling action, all those sorts of things. So I always start with that big picture distilled down, and then I work toward getting the beginning, middle, and end. Failing that, the beginning and the end, because if you have an end, you can work toward that. If you don't have an end, it sounds silly, and I learned that too in writing. I did a National Novel Writers Month, National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, and it made you get the story done. And that taught me that even if most of the story is rubbish, if you have generally a beginning and an end, now you have something to work with. So I try to have an end, and then I'll go back and find the big points. And a word that's used a lot is called the beats. And that's when things as they happen, and then stories should have moments where I don't like things to always be formulaic, but it's very helpful, and our brains like it, and it helps us to get from one point to the next without being lost in the middle. Is having acts, just like a play. Almost every movie will have acts where the hero or somebody gets to a point where something happens. Hopefully it's something bad, or something unfortunate, because the story has to keep going. There has to be drama. There has to be something they're working towards. So you'll want the action to rise, usually good to bad, to good to bad. And I say good bad, I mean from progress to an impediment usually. And so I start big, and I keep finding, and then I keep narrowing it down. So in the comic book sense, I will just plot it out in a linear. I have my beginning, my end, and I'll say I want them to do this, I want them to do this, I want them to do this, and then in between, I want these things to happen. And then if I need to keep narrowing it down, then I start getting. It almost starts creating each panel, and I can say, okay, this thing can happen in a panel, and then this thing can happen in a panel, and then so I'll put the actions in the panel, and then I will go back and do the dialogue, and it's not always perfect. I usually end up getting scenes, the acts written, and I like dialogue a lot, so I rely on my dialogue to propel the plot. That's a thing I like to do. I think dialogue can convey so much, and in the comic book sense, it's necessary, because the narrator or the thought bubble is not as popular anymore, or the captions help. But I like to use my dialogue is what helps me get the plot through.
Let me ask you something about for the aspiring writers who are listening and watching. Are there maybe a couple of references that you could recommend, like in terms of maybe a screenwriting book that really helped you, or a structural prose writing book? Like for me, it would be Joseph Campbell, A Hero's Journey. What about yours? Anything to recommend?
I would recommend, and I wish I had it in front of me, but I took it somewhere. Understanding Comics, and that was let's see. I'm gonna look at that one real quick. Thank you. Well, Understanding Comics is fantastic. And then one that I really like just for writing in general is The Art of War for Writers.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And that is another. That's another Scott.
While you're looking up,
James Scott Bell.
Oh, James Scott Bell. Okay. If I could also recommend, you probably have done this, and some of you out there, it's easy to get a hold of screenplays now. Of movies that are, 20 plus years old, and these certainly qualify, and they're excellent scripts. Jaws, the script for Jaws, is considered, airtight and nearly perfect as far as pacing. Act 1, 2, Act 3. The script for Witness is also often referred to as one of the more perfect screenplays to learn from as far as pacing, character development, dialogue, etc.
Well, where they go to the Amish village?
Yes.
Okay, I remember
Harrison
that one.
Ford, right. So, I wanted to throw in two different genres just to, give people a full range. There's plenty of them out there. You can just look up, best screenplays considered, by writers to be, inspirational and so on. But because we work in a visual storytelling arena, screenplays are just a fantastic way to learn how to write. Now we don't stick to it, 100%, but it's just a good foundational reference to have. I was going to ask you about Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Most of us write these days anyway for collections, and what that means is we write usually 3 or 4 22 to 25 page comics that are going to be collected in a trade and sold that way, because people now buy more complete stories than the old-fashioned monthly floppy idea. So that being said, what I do is I try to give each issue the similar beats of Act 1, 2, and 3, self-contained within the larger 4-issue template of the Act 1, Act 2. And a lot of the 4th issue sometimes falls into epilogue, or you'll split Act 3 into Act 3 Part 1, Act 3 Part 2, which becomes issue 4. But anyway, setting up the question, how do you break down the structure as you're writing? Do you just sort of intuitively let that happen, or are you thinking in your mind like, well, I need to do it this way? How does that work for you?
I think there is a little intuition, but I'm not that skilled as a writer to just let it happen. So there's a lot of brain power that goes into it. So in the 22 or 24 pages, yep, count backwards. Where do you want this problem, this critical moment to fall, so you have time to either resolve it or move it through if it's going to be a cliffhanger. So Steam Patriots, yes, is the first 4 issues are written like you said. They're going to be an overarching. So 1 through 4 is going to have its rising and falling action. Hopefully, if I've done it right, we can put them all together, and it will be a nice. You'll see the through that. But then individually too. So I want them all to end with a little bit of a cliffhanger. If you guys have read, anybody out there's read number 1. Number 1 ends with a bit of a cliffhanger. You're introduced to some of the bad guys, and I would hope it wants you to continue on. And so, yeah, so it's not an exact number, but you want to give enough time. And then that's a little bit where the intuition comes in. I read it and I think, okay, is it slow? When do we need to kind of jumpstart the action again? And I don't always mean action. I mean the movement. I mean the story. Yeah, because if you're stuck in a scene or stuck in one place or something, too much of the same thing gets boring. So each needs to change a little. Changing a location is helpful. It doesn't always have to be that, but yeah, keeping just to the page numbers is convenient for comic books to know where you need to change something and where an adjustment or a twist twist isn't necessarily the right word, but something needs to change. And what I like, and I want to give the rest of you artists enough time to talk too, is I love, and what I learned, because Steam Patriots is my first comic book, was my process working with the artist and finding out the visual cues that need to happen, because I can write them all day. I can write, this is what I want to happen, or a word, but a visual cue or how the pacing can work out. So I would send my words off to the artist, and he'd send thumbnails back with some notes and say, well, what if this and happened, and from this panel to this panel, or from this page to this page, and I wasn't necessarily even thinking. I try to, but with their a little bit more of a visual mindset, I would be surprised. And you almost every time, please. There was only a few instances where I said, it's not quite, and it only wasn't quite right was because I hadn't communicated. He came back with another idea, and I thought, oh no, that's not quite what I meant. And so, I don't know if you guys have thoughts on how you and Dean, I didn't want to derail. You were on a track there. I hope I answered your questions.
You did. You did. That was good. As a segue to now the artists, since I'm doing both, the one thing that I add, approach that I add to what you do, which is pretty much exactly the same, the big idea, breaking it down into bullet points, then expanding that into issue by issue, act 1, 2, and 3, then the whole overarching piece. But what I try to add is, and I don't know if you guys, the artists, do this, but each page I also consider camera angles and establishing shots. So you got to have a place. It has to have a sense of place. You got to know where you are on each page. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, every page has to have an establishing shot, whether it's extremely wide shot or medium shot. If they're in a room, you need to show the room with some level of detail. If they're in woods, you need to show the landscape with some level of detail. However, in the interests of meeting the deadline, it's not necessary to repeat full rendered environment for every single panel after that. So, you got establishing panel. I try to give a close up, try to give a medium shot, try to do an extreme close up. In essence, try to vary the camera work to keep it interesting to the eye. But then I also use the Z motion approach, not because of my last name, although it's a happy coincidence. I use the Z motion approach because we enter the page at the upper left-hand side, we go across, and we diagonally go down to the lower right, left, and then across the bottom, and then exit the bottom left in a Z movement. And I always keep that in mind too as I'm laying out the page, because again, it's critical. They're just some, all rules can be broken, especially if you are at a level where you can do that and have it succeed. But it's really good when you're starting out, and certainly to follow this more often than not. There are structural rules that help sell the story, that help make the story interesting, both visually and content-wise. And so I try to visualize each page as if it were a motion picture, whether that's, television or movies, it doesn't matter. Just if it's a motion picture and I'm thinking in terms of the high points of this sequence in the motion picture. Now, that's, again, from my perspective, because I was inspired more by film when I started in the business than anything else, even more so than comics. I read fewer comics, I watched more movies, and that got me to understand how to tell stories. But to throw it back, what about the artist side? John, what about you, man? When you get a script page, like, first of all, do you tend to get a script page that's DC style where he goes, extreme close up, medium shot, or do you get like more the Marvel plot page? And let's say, starting with the Marvel plot style, do you think about, breaking down, via camera angles, or do you just wing it, or how do you approach it when you get a script page? You stare at it and go, I can't get this done on time.
Yeah. Do you want me to draw things?
Yeah.
I haven't tried again in a while.
Okay.
Last time I tried, I got some sample scripts from Fabian.
Okay.
AKA Mr. I co-created Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you right now, actually looking at a professional script with somebody who's been doing it for years. If you're a newbie, it'll scare the crap out of you.
Mm-hmm.
But I was trying to do some things, and let's just say it sucked.
Well, it's practice. It's like everything else, man. It's practice.
Oh my God, it sucked. It was so horrible.
What's difficult? This will help explain. Might be one of the reasons that it was.
I know that's part of my problem was composition.
Okay.
And really working and using that with the camera angles and things like that, and throwing it in perspective. Mm-hmm. And that's stuff I've been working on. Mm-hmm. So I know what the problem was.
Okay.
I just haven't gotten back to that.
I see. One of the challenges I had, which is similar to that, is when I worked on a sample script, which in my case was an X-Man script. I found that, and again, this is because we are now in the era of the writer more so than the artist, which was when I broke into the biz in the 90s. So it's dialogue heavy, like what Scott was talking about. Most writers today, it's dialogue heavy. And so you spend a lot of time trying to stay out of the way of the dialogue balloons, right? So you're thinking about negative space. Also, a lot of these guys are more, it's not so much cerebral, but they're more verbose. So they're not thinking in terms of a motion picture. They're thinking almost as if they're writing a novel. I mean, a lot of these guys are like, dude, brevity, brevity. It's the soul of wit, my friend. Shakespeare, cut it down a little bit. So, and they're good. I mean, it's just a taste thing. It's like, you got to find that nice balance between, too much dialogue and then not enough dialogue. So that's kind of the challenge I had, was that the writer had so much dialogue. I found myself trying to stay out of his way. And then he would just say, fight scene between Wolverine and the Sentinel. And you're just like, are we close up? Are we far away?
Right.
Or is it medium shot? Do we see the background? What are the other X-Men doing? So again, a good descriptive script helps a little. Aaron, what about you? How do you approach when, I know, because you write and draw Toddlings, right? So
Right.
do you keep this structure like in the back of your mind as you're doing it? Is it more intuitive? And then as a sub question, were you more inspired by motion pictures, television, and movies, or were you inspired more directly by comic books?
Weird intro. I'd say probably more comic books.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I've been really focusing on, there's two things I've really been focusing on in Goblins and through my art. And one is acting.
Mm-hmm.
Basically emotion. So I don't worry too much about camera angles that much.
Okay.
I sometimes feel like I should switch them up, but the type of story I'm telling, and it's funny, me and my friend Tom have talked about this many a time. Camera angles work, and then I also feel there's a time when you need to know not to use them. Depending on what you're trying to do in the story. If somebody is talking, like say some mother had just lost her child in a death, and she's sitting on the couch, and say that's a 2-page thing. You don't want a bunch of extreme camera angles because that's just going to ruin the emotional aspect of what she's saying. So a straight on camera shot would be best. So I think camera angles could be used as storytelling effect. My thing I also try to work on is pacing, and I'm trying to work on letting my stuff breathe. And this is stuff that I've come across in comics, and this is stuff that I personally can make or break a comic. I think a lot of comic book writers have a real problem with telling versus showing, and there's a lot of comics that do a lot of telling. Older comics do this, and newer ones where they're just going to tell you what happens. I read like Judge Dredd, and like you get a lot of old Judge Dredd comics where like Dredd gets in the car and they show him getting in the car, drives down the station to and they show him getting into the station. It's like you don't need to tell me. I'm looking right at it. You do not need to tell me this. And I know a lot of comics I read, even modern day, want to hurry stuff up. It's basically like I've read so many comics where I'm sitting here opening and this guy's like, I'm overtaking the world, and Captain Amazing shows up. And, no, you're not. Yes, I am. And they fight. And it's like, and I'm supposed to care about this.
Right.
And you don't. You just lose me. I'm like, okay, and I just toss it aside. I think so many artists like to draw action or whatever, but I think there's a certain pacing. My Goblins is 12 issues, and there's only like 2 major action scenes and very few. Most of it is dialogue. But I'm also talking about some really abstract ideas in that series. And so I don't do a lot of camera angles because that would take away. I use the camera angles when they are important to the structure of the story. Other than that, I do not. And I will have, like, it's funny because Scott was talking about changing location. I actually don't do that. I will stay on a location. I'm actually drawing an 8-page dialogue. It's a conversation. It's 8 pages. It's in one location. And it's just this conversation. I'm slowing it down. I'm forcing you, the reader, to pay attention to the conversation by making it more pages. Instead of condensing, I could condense that conversation down to 3 pages.
Sure.
But if I'm forcing you to read 8 pages, I'm forcing you to slow down to pay attention to what they are saying instead of just rushing through it in like 3 pages. So there's little ways that I'm also trying to force the reader to do things as well. I will also slow it down by actually been putting in here and there like panels of pause. So in the middle of a conversation, I have just a character sitting there looking with no dialogue, and then they start speaking again because there's natural pauses in conversations. And that's that downtime. It's like hitting the beat in music. You want and then you hit the beat and you pick up again. This is stuff I'm trying to do to convey storytelling and what I'm saying or whatever. And this is something that I see a lot of comic artists don't do. And some of them that do it, I think Frank Miller actually, strange enough, does it pretty well. some of his stories. He'll slow. I've been rereading Sin City again, and he slows it down somewhat. Like when he was doing this when Nancy is dancing in one of the bars, he had like 3 or 4 pages for a dance, and he's slowing that down. Like this is going on in the background. Manga artists do this well. But I think slowing a story down can help the reader get more immersed in it instead of just like here, what, why. Yeah, then that's this is what happened, this is what's going on, this is what's happening, and it's like, yeah, but there's no emotional impact to it. No one's gonna care.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will often challenge myself when I'm drawing a page to say, could someone figure out what's happening with absolutely no dialogue
Exactly.
and no copy at all? And usually those are the better pages. I don't always succeed, but if you could follow the storytelling with no dialogue and no script at all, you're probably doing it right as an artist. So what that means is the writer then enhances those visuals, makes them stronger. But the other points you made are good because in terms of it can't be all action, it can't be all dialogue, it can't be unless you're really a genius, like you're an Alfred Hitchcock type of creator, and you are stuck in one room, like in Rear Window with Jimmy Stewart, and you see the whole movie through that one rear window, and you're watching everything unfold because he's in a wheelchair and he can't move and he can't get out of the room, and that's part of the effect. If you're that good and you can do that stuff, then do it. Like Watchmen, Dave Gibbons doing the grid layout and everything. If you're that good, then go for it. Break some rules and really go. But most of us are just trying our best to tell a good story and keep people engaged. So breaking the rules can be a detriment if you haven't reached that level of virtuosity that the quote unquote masters have, right? Who can just like do whatever. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. Right. So, and a lot of times, we're talking mostly to people who are aspiring, because the pros are out there just doing it. I don't listen to these guys talk about this. I'm already doing this. So,
watching us.
to help you guys out there listening, make sure it's balanced. Aaron makes such a good point about it doesn't have to be a big fight for 3 pages. It doesn't have to be, if you like dialogue, it doesn't have to be dialogue going on and on for 3 to 5 pages. A balance is really, really good. Think of music as a good reference template, right? Some of the better music, it has quiet portions, loud portion. It's very rarely is memorable music, just one tone, it rises, it falls, that kind of thing. So for what that's worth. Scott, back to you, my friend. I sort of like ambushed.
Yeah, John was going to say something, I think.
I was saying I was kind of hoping I remember some of this because I've actually been trying to attempt to write something.
Good. Do it, man.
Yeah. Dean, you were variation. And Aaron, you were saying pages of dialogue. It's all as long as it's moving the plot.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thing.
Show you from my comic kind of what I'm talking about here. Let me share my screen. This might give an illustration.
If somebody's left wondering why are we, then that's a problem. Sorry, Dean, you said Hitchcock Rear Window. Has anyone seen Rope?
Yes,
I brought this one up before, I think.
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
It's a fan. It's not one. It's a hard to find Hitchcock movie. I had to buy it on. I think I found it on Amazon used. It's I think it's all black and white. Jimmy Stewart's in it, and it is almost entirely. It's filmed to look like one continuous shot, and it's almost entirely a living room of an apartment. I mean, the camera it moves angles a couple times, but the premise is two affluent college boys, right? They've murdered somebody, and his body is in their trunk in the room where they because they think they can pull it off, they've invited all their friends to a dinner party. And Jimmy Stewart is one of their teachers from school, I think. I don't want to ruin it, but Rope is a fantastic fantastic Hitchcock movie. And to talk about just pacing and a movie driven by dialogue with suspense right there with the visuals, like there's so many scenes where that trunk is in the foreground. And Dean, you've seen it. There's a scene and he uses the kitchen door swings and the camera sees into the kitchen, and the maid is like putting things away, and I think she finds I don't want to ruin it. She finds, and it's just like it's paid like, and then you see something else.
Yep.
And then see something else. And then there's another scene where she's picking the books up off the trunk, and you're like, she's gonna find the body, and it's rope is so that's one of my favorites for pacing. Now, you talk about the pros getting there. Quentin Tarantino and some of his dialogue just, oh my goodness. Sometimes it's fantastic. I loved Hateful Eight, loved it. The Grindhouse ones. What's the one with the stunt driver girl in the car? She's
Death Proof.
Strapped to the hood.
Death Proof.
That's the one with Kurt Russell.
Yeah, Kurt Russell.
There's two of them.
Death Proof.
That's one movie?
Death Proof is the name of that movie. The other one is The Planet of Terror. That's the two movies that comprise Grindhouse. You can watch them actually separately if you want them.
Okay.
So you can go
that whole
find Death Proof as a movie. Yeah.
That whole diner scene where they're talking. I don't know. For me, it just didn't do it. Like I said, I love dialogue. I love good dialogue. I just couldn't. Dean, Casino Royale, the train scene with Moneypenny, not Moneypenny. Sorry, with Vesper and when Bond.
Vesper and Bond.
Fantastic dialogue. Fantastic for a Bond movie, an action movie. Great dialogue.
Oh yeah.
And
that's a good script, by the way, and it's also it's got wonderful action, wonderful pacing, good script. One of the better Bond movies.
Casino Royale.
If you want to jump in and get a good Bond movie and then learn about pacing, great pacing.
I did not like Quantum of Solace that much.
I didn't quite.
Talking about Hitchcock again, one of the scripts I read for school was Hitchcock. Great script. I've never seen the movie. I've just read the script and I really enjoyed it. Hitchcock, Anthony Hopkins, Helen Mirren. I think Scarlett Johansson is in it. Good script to read. Yeah, Aaron. I'm sorry, Aaron. You were going to show us, and I kept.
It's not coming up for some reason. My computer. It's not streaming. Okay. So sorry about that. Yeah, it's not doing what it wants to do. So it's just spinning.
So as far as visuals too, like having some variation, and I don't say it now. Everything we say here, these are just they're rules, but they're rules to be broken. People, if it works, it works. The Star Wars movies, George Lucas specifically changed the feel of each movie with the location, the colors. He wanted them to be. So if you were to look at them together, this one's browns and this one's space and this one's greens, this one's snow, and the scenery. So it gives you it refreshes. I think it refreshes you, and it's something different. And the visuals are something I am working on, and I'm trying to think like that when I'm writing for my artist. I'm trying to. I love giving the artist leeway, but there's sometimes I feel like this would be perfect. Like I've got a scene where there's something bad going on, and in Steam Patriots, Ben Franklin is a character for a little while, and my hero Felix. They're both in this scene, and time is of the essence. So I wanted a horizontal panel because I want the feeling that he has to move from left to right to accomplish this thing, and it gives it the feeling like he has a distance to go. Somebody's they're running, and it's because it's a static image, the impression he has to get from here to there, because we don't have to show him. We could show feet, we could show panel, but it's going to go long panel and then either inset or next one of him getting to the thing he has to throw a lever. That I'm not revealing anything. He's got to pull a lever in time. It's very simple, but you figure it out. Okay, yeah, he was here. The lever's here. He did it. So
there are ways, and McLeod covers this very, very well in Understanding Comics. But just for these purposes. You can also do very narrow panels together to show multiple reaction shots. If you've got multiple characters in a scene, you can have them all reacting to an event, right? By slicing narrow panels and showing each one of them in certain levels of surprise. For example, there's another thing. You can also, if you've got a fuse, let's say, that's burning, that's going to explode eventually, like in your comic, that would likely happen. You could literally just slice it and show it getting shorter. You know what I mean? But not take up a lot of room, right?
Right.
So there's little
You can
tricks.
do overlapping panels too.
Overlapping
panels. Like, for example, the running scene, as you were sitting here telling he had to run a distance, you could have a wide shot showing the distance he had to run, and then you could take it panels of overlapping panels with, like, in the feet breaking the panel, like they're running. And then you move over to a couple other shots, and then you get to your final shot. That's just what I looked in my head.
That's a good suggestion too, because in pacing as well, you can encourage the reader to move quickly by overlapping, by having no gutter space, having them right up to each other. But if you want them to slow down, put space between them, longer panels, that sort of thing. So that's another pacing option. Again, that's one thing I love to defer to the artist. If you've got an idea, that's why I love the collaboration process that comes with comic books. Prose and novels and so forth is just usually the artist, or the writer, and an editor. But the collaboration process, I mean, even so in Steam Patriots, my buddy Dan, and he's been on the show every once in a while. Dan has helped edit, but in his lettering, he would be lettering. He'd say, if we did a break here and interjected someone else's dialogue here, it feels more natural, or it gives it a pace, cadence that is a bit more suspenseful. And I like to throw in, I probably do it too much, but I like to throw in interruptions. I'd like people to be cut off, because when you're talking, a lot of times you don't finish a sentence because somebody starts, and especially when it's more heated or more urgent, that goes into pacing again as well.
I thought I'd add this too, and the artists know what I'm talking about here. This was more prevalent when I broke into the business in the 90s, but artists still use it. What I call leading the eye through the panels through a panel break. So you structure the body so that if they're, say, in one of my pages, a character is holding a loaf of bread near the edge of the panel, I'll go ahead and extend that hand so that it sticks out beyond the edge of the panel, pointing in the direction where your eye needs to go next, right? And so a lot of times you have to be careful not to overdo that. But if you've got a page that's very splashy, it's got a lot of action in it, it helps sometimes to use portions of the elements of a panel to guide the eye by breaking the panel and literally pointing to the next panel you're supposed to go to, almost like an arrow, a subliminal arrow.
They used to do the same thing with panels too. When they would do all the panel layouts in the 90s, the panels would sometimes go in circles to kind of point to each other, which sometimes worked, sometimes did not. The one that drove me nuts was when then they would switch to a 2-page panel spread. So instead of going one page down, you had to go across, and I'm reading.
And sometimes you didn't know. Sometimes you didn't know. Do I stay on it? Yeah. Or when they throw in an inset. So throw in an inset, and you don't know, does this inset come before or
what after? Yeah.
Until you read it, you read the dialogue. Oh, okay, that didn't make sense. But anything that takes you out of the flow is bad.
You have to be careful about using visual tricks, because it's kind of like using a zoom on a camera in a movie. If you get too many zooms, it loses its effect and it becomes annoying. One of the examples I like to use is the handheld camera became very popular during the Matt Damon Bourne Identity film.
Oh, those
And
got worse
it got
and worse.
so bad.
Unwatchable.
It's
Yep.
like, dude, it's like, I know Blair
Yep.
Witch made $1
Right.
billion.
Yeah.
Okay, but stop it.
But the
You got it. You can't do a
shaky
whole movie like this. I mean, you can, but it just doesn't. It takes at some point. I mean, you understand what they're trying to do, they're immersion
Yeah.
and so on. But at some point, you have to know when to not do that. A more subtle way of doing that is use it sparingly, use it only during action sequences, right? And if you've got, let's say you've got a boardroom where the head of intelligence is talking to the action spy, okay? You go, oh, it's boring, man. We should do it with like a shaky cam. No, don't do the shake cam. Just orbit the camera around the characters very slowly, right? So you just, there's your subject, just set it and just slowly orbit the camera. Give it enough motion. 24 was really good at this. Did you ever watch the 24 TV series? They do that too. Now, how does this apply to comics? Same exact thing. If you're going to do this crazy stuff, you're going to break borders, you're going to do multiple panels, you're going to have floating, flying panels with irregular borders that bounce around and go into, just do it sparingly. Don't do it all the time, because then it just looks like you took a 100-piece or 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle and dumped it on the page. As you know,
with the Bourne movies, I always felt it's funny you said that, Dean. When I saw it in the theater, I felt like it's like they put the camera on a string and then hit it. Just action.
Yeah. Right. It's like, whoa.
They did a lot of the Lord of the Rings movies too, with the battle scenes. They would do that.
Yeah,
Peter Jackson overused camera motion.
Now, sometimes I think they use that to hide CG as well. If you make the camera shaky and things blurry, you don't see CG stuff overlaid and all that. I could be wrong. I feel like it's used. Here's a trivia question.
Okay.
In what technique was used in the 1960s Adam West Batman when villains were on the screen? What camera technique?
Oh, is it
very simple? Yeah, they're always cooking.
To imply they were out of their minds, irregular, etc.
Yep.
Normal.
If Batman was on and it was just the villains, it worked.
Yeah.
And then the amazing magic of cinema when they were climbing a wall and their capes were always pulled out backwards.
They're always really fun.
The window cameo gag, right? With somebody coming out
So, okay. Talk to us a little bit, Scott, about how do you end the story? Like, you're right. Like, all of us are like writing these stories, right? We think about, oh, it's going to be a collection. When you come to an ending, are you always thinking in terms of, well, I got to leave the door open? Because that's what I'm always thinking. It's like, well, you want to end it, but you kind of want to leave the door open in case popularity demands another series. Is that how you approach it? Or
so I don't want Steam Patriots to end after 4 issues. So I'm hoping the ending will be great and satisfying, and my readers will just be just flooding my mailbox with fan letters and their love and adoration. But I do want to, of course, I want to leave it where, yes, the story can go on. There can be more. If it's wildly popular and Felix and all the Steam Patriots heroes run their course, of course, they'll get too old for the story, and it will end sooner or later, but that's a long ways down the road. So yeah, I'm leaving the 4th issue. It needs to wrap up. There needs to be a conclusion, but it chronologically there will be plenty more for it to go, to keep moving with.
I use a little story trick. Some might call it a MacGuffin, but in my story, which I guess I should do my elevator pitch so everyone kind of knows, right?
Yeah, tell us.
Their elevator. Okay, picture this: Victorian London. 2 secret societies are at war: an order of noble knights versus a dark cult of human traffickers. A beautiful archaeologist and a former U.S. cavalry officer join forces to find out why the metal silver affects evil. as it does. So that's the setting, right? That's the whole thing. It's like Raiders of the Lost Sword. Okay, so
That's good.
the item that carries mine forward, right? Like I'm gonna finish it in the 4 issues, but I could do a flashback that also tells a story that involves the sword or the daggers or the I guess weapons with the sacred silver metal, right? Or I could flash forward to the extreme future and have characters using the exact same weapons. So in my story, it's the weapons that anchor it. So you could go, it's like Excalibur, right? You could tell the story of Excalibur back in Arthurian days, but then, somebody in our time finds Excalibur and
Green Destiny. Yeah, that's in the Steam Patriots world too. And you and I have chatted a little about that.
Oh yeah.
About how we could expand the Steam Patriots world. Really, there's no limit to the world. And mine could go through. It could keep going chronologically, or we could go geographically, or we could tell. We could do one shots. We could do miniseries, spin-offs. We could go to sea, to air. No air yet, but that'll be down the road. Sorry to break away. Aaron, you've got the evil villain look going on there pretty well. Looking good. I like that.
I know.
Hey,
Stroking the kitty.
We're at the 1 hour mark here. I don't want to end our conversation, but we're going to transition here soon into the free for all. But I did want to ask one question: your feelings on now? This is a commonly held plotting feeling. Should every right-hand page, which in comic books is the odd-numbered page, the recto, should that every last panel on the right-hand page, should that be some sort of mini cliffhanger to make you want to turn the page? Yes, no, maybe sometimes. What are your thoughts?
Not in every page. Again, this goes into overusing tools. If everyone is a cliffhanger, then it gets old. You need to use the tools when they're the most effective. If you use them all the time, they completely lose their effectiveness. This is what happened when they started doing all the shock gore in like Game of Thrones. After a while, it didn't shock anymore, and no one cared.
Right.
Because people overused it.
Walking Dead. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is one of those. So you use them when they're effective, but beyond that, no, I don't. And as far as like I was going to answer the one about the endings, my Godling does have definitive ending, and I will not revisit that. Okay. But I have my reasons for that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I usually, just because the reason is when I want people to invest in a story, I want them to get a definitive ending. I think sometimes when you like Return of the Jedi, Star Wars Return of the Jedi was a definitive ending. You do not need sequels to that movie. You just don't. You do not need sequels to it. By doing it, you undo things. So I think there's something to be said for a work of art, a piece of art that is in and of itself and does not need to go beyond that. Besides, I want to do new things. I don't want to stick to the same old, same old.
Yeah.
It's fun to revisit things, but it can be overdone. I enjoyed the Blade Runner sequel, for example. It was fine.
It didn't need to be done,
but it didn't need to be
what
done.
It is. No.
Blade Runner was great. Just beginning, middle, end. Great sci-fi movie. Even Alien, as much as I enjoyed Aliens, which is such a fun action war movie, Alien stands alone as a sci-fi classic.
So there are some, and I just think if you're asking the reader to invest in your story, you want to give them. They're waiting for the payoff.
Right.
And this is This is my biggest problem with comics. I think this is why a lot of people sometimes have a hard time getting into comics because it's so overwhelming. You have to know so much, and people are like, when do you stop reading? And it's usually most people when they read a story, you read when the story's over. With comics, like whenever you get bored,
because
it's going to keep going forever.
Aaron,
it's literally all you can tell them.
That is the perfect setup for our pop culture discussion, because I don't mean to just subvert this and take over, but we're going to be talking about the Spider-Man trailer that just dropped, and boy, is it a really wide open discussion for casual viewer versus immersed fan and how the trailer works or doesn't work regarding those issues. But anyway, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was going to say, Aaron, so great stories that are kids' cartoons. Uh, oh my gosh, Gravity Falls. Have you guys watched that? It's on Disney.
No,
Love
I
it,
have
and
not.
it's a miniseries. It's 2 seasons and done. That they planned it that way.
Okay.
Gravity Falls, hilarious. It's a kids' cartoon, but the level of humor, it's very cleverly written, and it is individual episodes, but they build on a bigger plot. And then Over the Garden Wall.
Heard of that one,
I can't remember which. I think it was on Hulu, and Elijah Wood. I think Christopher Lloyd do voices in that. Very good cartoon animated miniseries, and it's done. It concludes, and the emotional thing. I love the emotional impact because, like with Gravity Falls, I'm like, oh, I want more, but
right.
It's the end, and so I can be just like you get to the end of Lord of the Rings. And
that's it.
Done.
That's it.
It's done, and you can go and you can. Other people can go cry into their pillows. Not that I would, but you can just go. You'd be sad, and it's over. You'll never have your friends, but you can start the story over and read it again if you want. But you're right. An end, I think, is part of like the emotional impact of like, that's it. That's it, folks.
Yeah. It allows the viewer to look. Oh, sorry. I mean, it allows the viewer to look at it as a piece of work, a complete piece of work, like a picture. Yep. If he has all these multiple parts. Then pretty soon it gets convoluted. Yeah.
Right. So I don't think this is not. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. All right, this kind of pertains to what I'm playing around with, and if anybody ever sees it, they'll know it'll look like it's been written by an artist and not by a writer, because there's like no dialogue in anything right now.
Okay.
But what would y'all think of something like where like that part of the story ends and then almost like a chapter or a book, and then it moves on to something else of a bigger picture?
I have a friend.
Rose.
Yeah, I have a friend who did that. He created an entire world, and he wrote a story about a character, and then when he eventually, like, I think he escapes hell or something in this fantasy world, and then it opens up to a much bigger picture where he's not the main character. There's much more to it. He was the introduction to that world, and again, that's been used, a ton of times. Avatar, great example of a bigger world introduced through that character. I think you could totally do that, as long as you establish your character. And then you can start using him you're exploring the world through his eyes. Yeah, I mean, that's been done many, many times.
A fantasy novel series I liked, I think it was written in the 80s, Raymond Feist, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, the Krondor series, starts off with Pug and Thomas and follows them pretty exclusively through the first 2 books. And then you go off and they become secondary characters and the world is much bigger. They're fantasy novels.
And Rice did the same thing where she started with Queen of the Damned, and they just grew. Not Queen of the... No, it was Interview with Vampire.
Interview,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then it just kind of grew from there.
John, you saying it's obvious that an artist wrote it with a lot of visuals. There's nothing wrong with that. One of my most favorite recent movies is 1917. I don't know if you've seen that, but there's a lot of his face. Visual. Yeah, and it's a fantastic movie. There are moments in it, just visual moments. There's no one saying a thing, and then when you do throw in, there's a scene where someone's singing, and it's just like it's so kind of out of place, but so it's jarring and it's moving. I think if you're thinking visually,
there's going to be dialogue in it. It's just that it's an afterthought. It's like I'm putting in there. Yeah, there's probably going to be a conversation here and here, but overall, this is just it's kind of laying down page by page.
Yeah,
what's kind of going.
Yeah, I mean, I would just if it doesn't call for dialogue, don't pollute it with it.
Don't do it.
One of the best character introduction scenes that I've seen in a movie was the original Blade movie with Wesley Snipes. The first scene where they introduce him said everything you need to say about that character.
Mm-hmm.
She
Mhm.
Well, I'm
established
not
that
going to
character in
drown
one
it either.
shot.
I mean, if it needs to be
Yeah.
short and sweet and to the point, it needs to be
Mhm.
short and sweet to
Yeah.
the point.
Visual
So
storytelling. If you can tell, if you can distill it down and get every bit of information across like that, I mean, that's it. That's storytelling. That's, and then if you want to reveal, but all the iconic characters, if you just look at a picture of Indiana Jones or James Bond, and you can, that's who they are.
yeah.
That's it. You don't need to clutter it. So okay, we're getting down to our we've gone into the free for all hour. Dean mentioned the Spider-Man, No Place Like Home, Spider-Man
No Way
3.
Home.
Spider-Man 3, No Way Home.
No Place Like Home.
There's
There's no
nobody
place like home.
home.
Spider-Man,
3.9,
Spider-Man and the Ruby
3.9,
Slippers.
it's 3.9, right? Or 9.3.
So yes,
Yeah.
Dean, you said, is it too much for the casual observer? And I would say yes. Almost like the What If series, which are fine. I'm not faulting them, but you got to have knowledge to know what's going on with some of those What Ifs, other than just the fun of them. Spider-Man,
I think that's what's good about the What Ifs, though, is because even
I love them.
You could be a casual and watch them, and they're still fun,
Yeah.
and you don't have to know everything about them. So it's not. It's so kind of going in the No Way Home trailer. If you kind of saw one back in the day, or maybe just kind of heard about them, and then decide, all right, I want to check this out because it's got a bunch of hype. I could see it being points maybe being too much, but overall the casual will still be like, holy crap, because of some of the movies that have come out in the past. They'll be like, it was a great freaking movie if they're into it.
If they don't rely on anything being hidden or implied, then great. And then everybody who knows all the extra stuff, great, even more. That's icing on the cake. But yeah, if they rely on people knowing some sort of knowledge from another incarnation of Spider-Man, I think you're going to run into trouble because people, wait, who's that? What are they doing? But you're right. If they can tell the story, the basic, this is fun. You understand everything that just happened. You don't need to know everyone's backstory or all that, which is what they did with this Spider-Man. He just mentions
itself a little bit.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Aaron,
what do you obviously you got Tom seeing.
What
do you think of the trailer?
I watched it. I didn't even know it came out. I watched it. I didn't see the second to last Spider-Man. I didn't. So I watched this one.
I liked it.
I think what's going to happen is I think Marvel's running into the same thing comic books running into. I remember somebody talking about some girl, I can't remember if it was online, wanted to show her dad the Marvel movies. She's like, oh, but you got to watch these other 15 to understand it. He's like, I don't want to do that.
That's
they're going to run into that. This is what's happening when you are so far into it, and that connectivity starts to kind of people don't want to invest in that much anymore. I think these franchises, these huge connected multi-universe. I do think it's hilarious that movies have basically turned into television, where each movie is an episode instead of an actual movie. Whatever happened to going to see an actual complete story instead of like, well, it's going to continue. And I mean, again, then you come back to the same plot. So when you stop watching the movies, whenever you get bored, I guess.
Whenever you get bored,
because there is no end.
Yeah.
I actually have to kind of disagree a little bit there. I think the movies actually hold. I mean, you're actually scaring somebody away saying, well, you need to watch these 15 movies to understand it. I think every movie stands very well on its own as a movie. And then if you want to get into the whole thing, you can watch them all. But just like the Captain America stands great by itself. Iron Man stands
individual movies. But if you watch like Endgame with the other, like Endgame, you're not going to know.
You gotta know what happened.
You could just watch the two Infinity movies. That's it.
But then you'd have to explain like who's Peggy Carter, And why did Captain America go with this lady in the background? You'd have to explain, okay, they're going back to a previous Avenger movie. What happened there? Who's Loki? There was a ton of stuff
But
you would
why
have to
would you
explain
have
even to
to? If
go
that's
through
all
that.
the only 2 movies they watch, why would you have to? They leave plot holes all the time in every movie.
Yeah,
Well,
and everyone complains about them.
Yeah.
well,
But at
I
the
tell
same
you,
time, is it such a big plot hole that it takes away from the story? No, it's not. It's
well,
not even really truly that
I would.
relevant to the story.
Those are probably the other two. I think the individual movies hold up very well, like the character ones, but
Yeah.
the overall like connecting ones, I do think you have to have some leeway into them. And I mean, they're not Marvel's not the only movies to do it. I mean, Lord of the Rings. I mean, you put on, the Return of the King, and somebody's never seen the previous two, they're not going to know
Right.
what's going on. So I mean, they're not.
Right.
Marvel's not the only one to do it. Marvel has superseded because it's like what 24 movies into the thing now, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's TV series that do this. I mean, and but it was just I don't know. It's one of those things. After a while, it does become a little. And this is what I ran into with comics. It just becomes a little unsatisfying if there is no definitive ending to these things. This is why I quit reading superhero comics. And most comics I read are independent. Or if a comic has an ending, great. If it goes on forever, I'll read it from the library, but I don't really buy them because I'm just like I'm invested in something that I know I'm never gonna get. It's basically you're chasing that satisfaction. It's almost like a drug. You're chasing the satisfaction you're never going to get because you're never going to see it completely end. Like, because I finished reading the X-Men, and when Claremont left the X-Men, I quit reading it. X-Men's still going. I don't care. I guess I read my fill.
But anyway, but I'll actually go John Wick. It's a continued story throughout.
It is, and I think it actually should have ended on the third one.
Each one stands well on its own because it gives you a summary about what's going on in each one.
Well, yeah, that's right. It gives a summary. Do the Marvel movies give summaries?
No.
But I'm just saying, but it's just one of those things. If you sit there and you go like in the third one when the adjudicator's talking, she's talking about about what he's done over the last 3 weeks, or they bring up the puppy. What keeps somebody from going? Well, what about what puppy?
Right. Well, somebody in a show. This goes back.
For that movie, the way it's going, it doesn't hurt that movie. It doesn't really. It's no longer a big plot point.
No, it's not a big plot point, but it does lose its effectiveness if you just tell somebody about it and don't show them about it. They're still going to technically understand what's happening, but they're not going to understand like all of this is over a puppy. They're not going to understand the emotional implication of that unless they see the first movie. You can say like, hey, you can tell someone like, yeah, this guy's killing all these people because they killed his dog. Okay, but you see the first movie, you find out it's about his wife. The wife gave him the dog. There's a lot more subtext and there's a lot more dramatization, emotion that when you say that scene in the later movies, that connects more. You can summarize things, and comics do this too. I mean, I understand you have to summarize stuff, but again, that goes in the showing, not telling. If you tell somebody the last plot points, okay, technically I know what's going on. They don't mean as much to me. If you watch Return of the Jedi and found out Darth Vader was Luke's father, just through happenstance. Oh, okay, I get that. That's nowhere near as effective as Empire Strikes Back when he's like, Luke, I am your father. That scene hits, and then it makes those other scenes in the other movies have emotional impact. And that's how you connect your readers to the story. If you're going to tell them, no one cares. You got to make that emotional impact visually.
The viewers or the readers maybe adding their own story to it.
You can't. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do that.
Doesn't that cause them to be a little bit more vested into it?
You can. I mean, as a writer, I mean, I want to control your emotional stake in my story to a degree. I don't want you coming in and deciphering something new. For instance, I had this joke where like somebody read one of my comics. My main character's name is Boomer because he's the god of lightning. Boom, lightning, right? She read it. She's like, "Oh, I noticed you referenced like that. Hey, okay, Boomer joke." No. That was not referenced in there. She's reading it out of context. So there's a point where, like, yeah, I want to control a little bit of your interpretation, a little bit. So you're not running around going, oh, he's making political jokes. No. And that story was written years before that joke ever came along.
But some of that's still being done in, like, John Wick or stuff like that. But it's
Yeah.
just like in the individual movies, but it's just open just enough to where you can make your own interpretation of what's been happening.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
But
I'm
it's
sure you
still
can.
within the control of what they want you to kind of the direction they want you to go down.
Yeah, I can see that. Let's just say personally for me, it doesn't work. If somebody, I would rather go see it. So if somebody tells me, because I've read
You'd
comics
rather hold
from
them and go,
Snow.
"This is what it
Yeah,
is." No.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've had comics I get from libraries, where I get issue 3 or something and just check it out, and they're telling me what's happening. Uh,
Well,
but then again, if I go back and read it, I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it.
You always want. Yeah, that's why you never when there's a spoiler or you haven't seen it. Shh, don't tell them because there's so much more
Uh,
impact when you can go see it or when people will record a sporting event. Don't tell me
yeah.
the score. I want to see the game, even though I know it's over. I know it's happened. I know you could tell me. But let's welcome Brent. Brent, I want you to tell us how you plot a story. I want you to tell the dramatic beats, where you work in cliffhangers, your writing process, and then tell us everything you think about Spider-Man and the Marvel Universe. Okay, go.
Okay. Okay. Character over plot. I write in a closet. Spider-Man's okay. MCU is good. Marvel Comics not so much. Thank you. I'm Brent Larson.
All
And
right, Brent.
right
Thank
to the
you. That's
program.
Very nice.
Brent. Thank you.
Very nice.
Brent, we've been we're in our free for all here, and we are in the waning moments of our show. I'm very happy you could join us. We have had a great
Sorry.
discussion on that's okay, on plotting and story writing techniques and techniques to propel the story, to speed up the action, slow down the action, the writing side, the artistic side. It's been a great conversation. We did get onto this debate about the MCU and with discussing the Spider-Man No Place Like Home and the Ruby Slippers trailer that just hit. So thoughts on that?
I missed something.
I think
Sure,
the
we
Ruby
got
Slippers-
Spider-Man.
Yeah, there's a Ruby Slippers. What? There's no place like home, Toto. There's no place like home.
place like
Yeah.
home.
No place like home.
I'll get you, my pretty and Miles Morales.
We didn't really get into the meat of it, really, other than that we veer right off to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and if it's a problem that the universe is so big, do you need to know what's going on? And so I think we've deciphered the answer is yes and no, and that there can be two levels of knowledge for these movies, for a lot of movies, for a lot of series, of how much knowledge you need to have, and sometimes they do write that you need to. Aaron attests that much is lost if you don't. And John is saying you don't always need to. But I think there's.
And then we had the knife
Brent,
fight.
and then there was.
I don't know. I guess I'm just a person who wants to. It's kind of like when you're reading a book. The writer's taking you there, but you build the images in your head.
Right.
That's how you get invested in a book series. I mean, in the end, what do you want? You want them to be vested in what you're doing, so they go and buy the next product, right?
Right. I
Well,
was arguing the fact, but reading an entire book is much more emotionally effective than reading a summary of a book. And you would put the summary of the book in the beginning of the book to summarize it.
So I would say my feeling is with the Marvel movies and in maybe the Star Wars movies, the beauty of it is that they have created this huge universe for those of us who love it, who have loved these characters and have been along for the ride. That's a beautiful thing. You've got this movie's connected to this, and this character was in this movie, and this movie was so that's beautiful. But at the same time, it is an encumbrance to somebody who wants to just jump in, because where do they jump in? And if you know that this story is so big and so great and so grand, you want them to see it all, and you want them to. So you don't want to tell them, you don't want to summarize. You want to say, oh, Captain America starts here, and Iron Man does this, and then we bring Doctor Strange in here, and why are we sad when Peter Parker disappears, or those sorts of things. So I feel like it's a great thing, but also a problem. The Star Wars world as well. Well, who's this guy and why is this? Who's he? What's doing? Yeah, all of these big worlds can be a problem, but they're beautiful and they're an amazing story. But it's difficult to summarize.
I think
Dean,
I thought it might be good to compare two movies to really make a finer point at it. I think if you look at Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, and you look at how well a person off the street doesn't even know who Spider-Man is could come in. No, I don't know if that exists, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Could come in and sit down and watch Spider-Man 2 because the credits with Alex Ross's artwork show you the origin of Spider-Man. And then we're off and we have a completely self-contained story about Spidey versus Doc Ock, right? And beautifully acted, probably one of the best sequels to a superhero movie made. It's true to the character. This movie, to me, just my taste, it looks so jumbled and like they're trying to shoehorn so much stuff. Oh, we're going to do the Spider-Verse. Oh, we're going to do Superior Spider-Man. And oh, then we're also going to do the black suit. And we're also going to say that all the other Spider-Mans existed that were acted by different characters. And we're also going to bring in, Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2 because it is considered the most successful Spider-Man sequel. And we're going to do all this. We're going to do all that. It's like, to me, it's lazy. And I'll just step out there. It's lazy writing. If you can't write a story that can stand completely on its own and somebody can walk in off the street and totally not really know what's going on and sit down and go, man, that was friggin' awesome on its own without any explanation of, see, that character, that was like back when such and such happened or whatever. You don't, it's lazy. I think it's lazy. Now, have they set up pretty much their own trap that they have to do it this way? Yes, because the MCU is this now sprawling, interconnected universe. But again, it's a two-edged sword. It has wonderful experience potential because it's so huge and rich, but it's also a problem because you're now inside of a private club and the person who just joined the club has no clue what's happening. So I think
this
it's a weakness.
goes to, oh, I'm sorry. I think this goes to a problem with a lot of movies referencing pop culture. So you have Marvel Universe, let's just say Disney's the worst offender to this in my head. There is a point, like half of it's telling a story, the other half of it's giving all this fan service, referencing all this pop culture stuff that everyone's into. I've seen lately that the pop culture reference is starting to overtake the story. In other words, does the story have to be good? No, dude, just reference the other Spider-Man movies, reference the other Doc Ock. They'll get a big thrill out of it. It'll be good.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've told people, I've asked this before. I mean, everybody, if I asked you to remember plot for plot, like the last one of the Marvel movies, tell me like detail from beginning to end exactly, generally, basically what happened, and compare that to what happened in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You can much more remember what happens in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so many of the stories in the Marvel Universe are so convoluted with a bunch of other pop references and other stuff interceding like a constant. It's like, to me, you're driving down the road, right? You're focusing on the story, and every few minutes they want you, oh, look out the window, look at that. Oh, look at that window, look at that, look at that. Pretty soon you're like, okay, what was I driving to?
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge problem. This is why some of these movies start to, I mean, I watch them and then I start to literally just glaze over. Like I'll actually start thinking of it as like, what am I watching? Especially the 30 to 40-minute fight scenes at the end. Black Widow, I got this. I actually forgot what was happening in the movie. I'm like, oh wait, was she fighting? So I don't care. And because it was just like, it's just like constantly throwing stuff at you. And again, it's to the point where I'm just like, okay, you have 4 different fights, everything's exploding. It takes 20 minutes for a satellite to explode in midair instead of one huge exploding. She's falling, she's on the ground. Now they gotta, I don't know if they had a fight there, and then you gotta have the thing with, and pretty soon I'm just like, is this done yet? Can I go home now? Is it done?
I hear all this, and I'm surprised he likes manga so much sometimes.
I don't actually like not modern manga. A lot of them now.
Okay,
well, even the older stuff takes forever too.
Yeah.
I got one for you. Another side by side comparison to really make the point. Okay, Escape from New York versus the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, right? Escape from New York is absolutely much easier and better. I mean, it's straight to the point. Love that.
I mean, they're both anti-heroes. They're both anti-hero movies with, these bizarre events going on, post-apocalyptic events. But one is so memorable because of the character, the performance, the style of it, right? And then one is just pop culture jumble, a special effects reel. Basically, it's a special effects reel. I mean, I watched Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
I'm like,
which Suicide Squad?
Yeah, the newest one I got. It was hilarious at the end when this guy told the shark guy to go go eat the person. I'm like, did Captain America say the same thing that Hulk? Are we just reusing the same jokes now? I mean, like the guy was like, I'm a superhero and gets crushed by the tentacle. I'm like, okay, how many times have I seen this joke? Like you can see it coming a mile away, and I'm like, you guys have got to get some new material. Have you literally written yourself into a corner where you're doing the same jokes non-stop? Yeah, I got bored through Suicide Squad to the point where I was like, okay, they're fighting like a huge starfish, and now there's fish on I know Starry, I know the character. I know all this, and then they gotta go fight it because now they're good people, even though they're hardened criminals that are in prison. There's no real reason why. They didn't make any reason those characters why they would be good or anything. I mean, at least in the first one, the guy had his daughter. Will Smith's character had his daughter, so that was the impetus to do good, be better for his daughter. But in this one, it was like we're good because you're the protagonist, and I guess it's already demands you do good stuff. So go do good things, I guess.
and one last hit on that. Okay, notice John Carpenter did not have to use pop music as a crutch in Escape from New York, right?
No.
He wrote all the
soundtrack is classic.
New York, right?
Yeah.
So these movies now, it's like, oh, we got to pull this cool song because Guardians of the Galaxy started this whole like hits from the 70s, hits from the 80s, hits from the 90s. It's like, can you think of some more crutches, guys? I mean, can you just write a cool story, shoot a cool action adventure, you're out, beginning, middle, end? Why all the crutches, man? I think it's because they're getting lazy. They want to get.
In the newest Suicide, I counted 3, and there might have been 4, but there were 3 times they're all walking slowly into the foreground as a group.
Slow walk.
I think it was like 3, and there might have been a 4th, but just like, okay, I get it. They're cool.
Here's the answer.
Well,
it's the same thing that's been happening throughout since all movies, music, books, everything that started. It's what's selling now.
Yeah.
So you want people to buy it now. You don't want people to buy it later. You want people to buy it now.
Well, yeah, you have to sell out
now.
There's also that,
but you don't have to sell out completely. And I'll explain. I think when you see the new Dune, now I could be wrong because the preview does reference an old Pink Floyd song called Eclipse, right? But I'm pretty sure there's not going to be any bebop 70s music in that thing. There's not going to be any pop culture references, and it's going to make a gajillion dollars because they're going to stick to the story. They're going to stick to the quality of the characters. I'm hoping now. It's just, So it's it's a difference between John. It's a difference between the best fast food hamburger you've ever eaten versus the best filet mignon you've ever. They're both good. But it's like once you have the filet mignon, you go, man, I want another piece of that filet mignon. I mean, if I'm hungry, I'll eat that great hamburger, and that fast food is awesome. But man, that filet mignon was friggin' amazing. I want another filet mignon. So again,
now at this point, I'm genuinely wondering if you're suggesting that Escape from New York is the filet mignon in this scenario. Raiders, I can get maybe, but I mean, I know what you mean about crutches, but we also got to remember who we're talking about because James John Carpenter. His movies have not made a ton of money, but one thing he can say about his stuff is he owned it from beginning to end. And that's kind of his signature. He makes his movie, and that's awesome. Now, what's interesting is James Gunn has done the same thing with Suicide Squad. You can almost see DC was like, okay, you know what? We love what he did with Guardians, but that PG-13, okay, that probably reined him in too much. Let's just let him off the chain and let him do his thing. What's funny is when he does this thing, it was a huge mess. It was like he was putting the entire audience into an epileptic seizure with everything that was going on the screen. And most of it didn't really make a lot of sense, and people were laughing their heads off and then forgetting what it was they were laughing at. And then he'd throw in he'd throw in a 70s hit, but it's almost like he did that because that's who he is. I mean, James Gunn loves that stuff. There's a reason why Joss Whedon probably didn't have a 70s hit anywhere in any of the Avengers movies that he did. That's just not his thing. But when he got his hands on a movie like Suicide Squad and he was able to do it his way, we got something. And it was funny because my wife and I, after the movie, were like, did we like it? Well, it sure seemed like unbridled James Gunn. But what's weird is we still like the Guardians movies better because he does better when he has curvature. When someone's saying, yeah, that's a little too much, we're not going to be doing that giant shark ripping the guy in half. Drax is never going to do that in a Guardians movie. And maybe that's okay. So, I don't know. The thing I keep coming back to is the movies that, especially the superhero movies, the thing that I love about what Marvel is doing is that they are giving some auteur type directors some really good artistic license, but they're not giving them carte blanche. And James Gunn got carte blanche, and he made something that was almost like someone was, I don't know, pouring acid in my ears. The good kind, if there is such a thing. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I think something just happened, but I can't tell you what it is. And it was a bit much. So,
gentlemen,
I don't know.
We need to be thinking about our parting thoughts here. We have passed the 9:30 Eastern mark here. So, Aaron, you had something to say. Didn't want to cut you short.
Oh, I was saying most of these movies are also geared towards a younger audience, and since the younger audience is always on their cell phone or whatever, they are going for that 5-second attention span, the MTV 10-second cut that was affecting people so much in the 80s. And then in the 90s, when we started talking about why the kids can't pay attention, you look at TV and it's cutting every 2 seconds. Movies are the same way. And so it gets tiring on my eyes because I'm not used to that all the time. So even just watching these things, just visually, just stuff just flying everywhere. And also the fact that, with CG, you can do literally anything you want. And that is also a big negative plus a big positive. Because when you give somebody a chance to do anything they want, they throw everything in. Even if you don't want it there, it's that gets kind of old. It's like, yeah, I don't need to, to see this. So it's like, again, the reason why there weren't 30-minute visual effect fight scenes at the end of old movies is they just didn't have the budget. Now you could do that. You can make an entire movie a fight scene and probably keep it on the budget because, so again, that goes into the whole, action doesn't mean anything unless it's direct to the point, has some emotional stake for the characters. And that's sometimes my big problem with a lot of these movies. A lot of the action is just, well, we need to see action because action's cool and people want to see that. But I know you don't really care about the characters per se. Like I said, I've talked many times to my other friends. I mean, one of my favorite all-time action movies is Die Hard. And Die Hard is just like you invest in that character. That's why it works. I didn't invest in any of the Suicide Squad members. So them doing whatever they were doing, I didn't care.
Yeah,
doesn't
matter. Yep.
Yeah. That might be why, if you think about it, the end game fight scene took so long, but no one really complained about it. But the reason was because you were literally watching not a 30-40 minute fight scene at the end of a movie. You were watching a 30 to 40 minute fight scene at the end of 22 movies.
Yeah.
And everyone who was there had a stake, and the audience in particular was like, we've been in for this long, we need something pretty splashy. So if you think about it, a 10-minute fight scene, there's no way it ever would have worked. No one would have been happy. So they needed to go balls out basically from start to finish. But I don't think that's why then we see the same thing in Black Widow, and we're like, shouldn't she have hit the ground by now? Why did she fall from space? Yeah, so yeah. By then it's over.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to start wrapping up here. I would like to thank you all for your time here and your wisdom. So much wisdom, just pouring out. And folks out there, if you are watching this live, we appreciate you. And if you're watching this later, we appreciate you as well. You are always welcome to throw in some comments. We try our best to get back to those. Head over to silverlinecomics.com. Check out the blog we've got going on there. You can get all of our titles. Almost all of our titles. That'll take you over to indieplanet.com, and you can grab our comic books. September 18th and 19th. Where are you going to be? You're going to be in Florida. You're going to be at the Daytona Beach Comic Convention. We thank them for their support of Silverline. The first 250 people through the door are going to get a free Silverline poster. Yeah, that's right. And there's going to be exclusive Silverline content, comic books cut with special Daytona Beach Comic Convention covers, and there's going to be a bunch of Silverliners there to sign copies and sign signature or autograph books. And if you want to find out about John Martin's moonlighting in previous careers, that's the place to talk. All right, you can get personal. And he'll chat. September 18th and 19th. That is just around the corner. We've got just a few more weeks. I will be there. I know other Silverliners will be there, and it will be a fantastic time. So we were talking about plotting, about pacing, about making our stories interesting, the artistic and writing side. We had a great conversation. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is always a deep well from which to mine. Do you mind? Well, plenty of information for us to talk about that. And yes, and next Sunday there's a Silverline show. Tuesday there's a Silverline show. We would appreciate if you headed to our Facebook and our Instagram, and I think we're even on LinkedIn, and anywhere you can like, subscribe, follow, share, all those good things. Spread the Silverline word. We have more titles in the works. They're on their way, and we can't wait for you to read them. So that's a wrap, folks. We're gonna say goodnight, but before that, we're gonna remind you to make mine Silverline.
Silverline.
All right.
Yes,
We good? All right, folks. Yeah. Good night, everybody.